People make mistakes. Sometimes when you do good, you cause unintended harm to someone else. That person is mad at you, but over time may get over it. Heroes do this sort of thing a lot more than normal. They have good intentions, but accidentally cause harm to buildings or people around them. Why are you talking like that? Just setting some background. Get to the point. Some villains are forced into plots and make it worse, and how heroes sometimes are written to never be wrong. Fine. I watched Daring Don't recently and thought it had an okay start. Daring Do was going to retire because stories were published about how she caused damage to a town on one of her adventures. Rainbow Dash denies all the accusations because she's obsessed with her and wants to tell them off for their opinions. When we get there, we meet one pony who does have an actual problem with Daring Do. His apple cart was destroyed by her somehow, and I don't really think they explained how she broke it. Plus then there was also later a person with a hotel in which she never paid. Alright, an episode where the hero sees the destruction that was left behind by them. How they question if their quest really was good or not. Except Cavaleron is the one who was spreading the information in order to steal gems from an unsuspecting public. He was painfully forced in just so Daring Do could be right. So why do people force some sort of villain into stories that don't normally need one? Well, it could go back to how myths worked. The basic setup of those was you have some sort of hero going against some sort of big beast. The ultimate good versus evil story. But sometimes they aren't always necessary. If you want to write a story, there are usually three basic formats to start with. Man versus man, the most well-known, man versus nature, and man versus self. There is a fourth one, man versus society, but some say it's just man versus man but on a bigger scale. Anyways, these 3 or 4 outlines are used in many stories. Man vs. Nature is usually about a character surviving against the weather or animals. Obviously, this won't help you. Man vs. Self is the one I wanted to look at in this episode, but the writers chose otherwise. This case is usually the character going through some sort of struggle, notably a question of morals or some other inner conflict. This could be used as a first step to cause a hero to stop being one. They've realized the pain they've caused to others because they were devoted to their quest. Daring Do realized she caused damages to some civilians, like breaking someone's business cart and a statue in the plaza. Yeah, so many lives harmed. However, this is only used to push it towards a man versus man plot. What's so bad about man versus man plots? Stories like that usually have cool action and whatnot. I don't have a problem with those types of plots. What I hate is when a man versus self plot is started, it doesn't need to throw in a villain just so the status quo remains unchanged. Plus, it makes it seem that the hero will continue to be correct and can never do anything wrong. When your hero is a Mary Sue or Gary Stu, they become uninteresting. Characters second-guessing their decisions or realizing their mistakes, making them more human, as well as a bit more relatable. Yeah, dropping the plot so the good guys are still good instead of having them make a mistake and learn from it. Cavaleron had to be evil because he's evil and Daring Do is good. Except, things don't work out perfectly like this. And that's what can make these stories interesting. I know we're really hitting the nail in the coffin about mistakes and flaws making characters interesting, but even the show knows this. In Fame and Misfortune, they bring up the idea that they're flawed characters and will never be perfect. When you have an adventure kind of story, flaws are one tool that separates characters instead of just design and name. In slice-of-life stories, small character traits and the mistakes they make are what give them even more character differences. Here's a scenario. Say a character is on some quest but accidentally kills an innocent bystander in order to stop someone evil. They become riddled with guilt and begin to question their decisions and tactics to the point where they even want to change it. Now imagine this same scenario, but it turns out that the bystander who was killed was just as evil as the villain, or the villain paid the civilian to be there at the right point just to incriminate the person, and the civilian actually never died. When the villain is added, it can take away from the character because it forces us to put our hate onto the villain instead of see how our character develops because, surprise, surprise, the character would still be right and continue to endanger the lives of others but be proven and praised by the world for stopping the big baddie. Man versus man plots do work, but they are more appropriate for stories that are focused on action and adventure. Man versus self can work in these stories but also works in a slice of life scenario. MLP wants to be both adventure and slice of life, so they divide the episodes between the two, but in this case, they thought combining them would be better. My Little Pony is no stranger to this style either. When Flim and Flam were fighting in Lost Pegasus, it was prime time to give us more character about them, as well as the other acts in Lost Pegasus. until they gave up and decided Jay Leno Pony was causing all the havoc, and by stopping him, good would be restored. Except that's not how villains should be used, even if they are one-offs. One-off villains can work if their entire plan isn't just, I'm evil, stop me, and all bad is gone. One-off villains are usually characters that were established in an area off-screen or have an army with them to take over the area where our characters currently reside. If they're just straight-up evil, then we automatically want to root against them, unless the characters are just unlikable like Rainbow Dash. One-off villains will be defeated in the same episode they're introduced, but episodes like it also give us some sort of information about our characters as they try to stop him or her. Sometimes they could defeat one of the characters in combat and cause them to mope for a little, only to be given a pep talk and defeat the baddie. Sure, the character development is later forgotten in the series, but it doesn't devalue the fact that a character went through some change. Some episodes of shows have combined a man vs. man and man vs. self plot very well. In Allstein's The Haunting Hour episodes, Grandpa's Glasses and Toy Train, a man vs. man plot is kind of set up. Grandpa's Glasses has the mother's inner demons, while Toy Train has the ghost of a train conductor. Both go about it differently, though. The inner demons seem to act more like a villain, but they aren't the true problem. It's the mother's inability to forgive her father, and that's the source of the demons causing harm. In Toy Train, the ghost train conductor isn't a villain at all, and was actively trying to get close to the father to tell him to move on. Both combined a man vs. man and man vs. self plot, and were successful in doing it. So, are you saying that people should or shouldn't try to combine man vs. man and man vs. self, or even throw in man vs. nature, or not? If someone wants to write a man vs. self and man vs. man plot in the same story, all power to them. But a villain shouldn't be thrown in for the sake of having a villain. The villain shouldn't just be a hate sink. They should pose a threat and cause some damage to our heroes, whether it be good or bad. You also don't need a villain if you want a character to change. If it's slice of life, the character can make a mistake and learn from it. If it's action or adventure, you can either have them cause a mistake, or have a villain that causes some sort of change within them, whether it be causing the character to accidentally harm an innocent, or force the character to go against their morals for the greater good. In the end, this is a small nitpick, but it can go a long ways to help anybody who wants to write a story and want to do something like this but better. This is just a small editorial video for the month, and you can expect some more editorials when I get around to them. But we'll see you all later. Hey, way to hijack the ending to my video. Get over it.